So in the last lecture, we were talking about the corn market. Again, we're talking about markets here. We're using the tools of supply and demand to analyze markets. Quick review of what happened in this particular market, right? We started at D and S, demand curve and S curve there with P1 and Q1 equilibrium, right? And then we said, what happens in the market for corn if we institute an ethanol policy? In other words, we're going to use corn for something new, something we weren't using it for before. Well, that's going to increase the number of buyers. So that shifts the demand curve and increases demand from D to D1. And that drove up the price of corn and it increased the quantity of corn. So the result of an increase in the number of buyers in the corn market was a higher equilibrium price and a higher quantity, right? So sort of keep that in the back of your mind. We're going to erase all this. Now we're going to talk about how does this affect other markets, right? So we're going to erase this all quickly, right, as quick as possible because we're running out of time on our video here. And we're going to draw supply and demand. This time we're going to talk about soy. Right? This is a completely different market, but we're going to show you how markets are interrelated. Right? They're definitely interrelated. So we draw a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. Right? And we correctly label them P and Q. And we draw a downward sloping demand curve and upward sloping supply curve. Demand for soy, supply of soy. Right? And we label that soy as a Y up top. We put a point where they come together and we call that equilibrium E1. So this is the price and quantity of soy. Right? P1 and Q1. So in a previous video we went into detail, we just covered it again about what happened in the corn market. So this is going to be a non-price determinant of supply. We're going to write down price of corn increased. Now think about this. You're a farmer. You own a 10,000 acre farm. You can easily decide whether you want to plant corn or soy. So imagine you were splitting your production 50-50 in the previous planting season. Now what's corn? It's a related good. So underneath that we're going to write down another hyphen. We're going to write down increase in the price of a related good. So most farmers, right, they're pretty swift people, right? Imagine if corn is selling for a decent price higher than it was in previous planting season, right? Remember, incentives matter, right? Producers are driven by incentives, and higher prices entice producers to produce and sell more. So think about it. If you had a farm and you could easily switch back and forth between producing corn and soy, if the price of corn increased, what would you want to do? Grow more corn or grow more soy? Well, obviously, you'd want to grow more corn, right? So next year, you're going to plant 7,500 acres of corn and only 2,500 acres of soy. So what does that do to the supply of soy? All right, we're going to write down another item. We're going to write down decrease in supply. Because of the increase in the price of related good, this decreases supply. And then we're going to draw this shift. That would be a leftward shift of supply. There we go. And we're going to label that S1 creatively. And a new equilibrium in E2. So because of the ethanol policy, right, this is a totally different market, right? Secondary market affected here, a different market. We already found out what happens in the corn market. Well, what would happen in the soy market? Right? Well, look what happens, right? At our new equilibrium, we're going to write down results. Price of soy goes up and quantity goes down. So price up and quantity goes down. Now we can start to sort of analyze President Bush's ethanol policy and why it really wasn't that well thought out. It drove up prices of food items quite handsomely. And if you look at that period of time, right after the ethanol policy, the following 3 years were subjected to significant price inflation of food items. So you have to think about, right, government decisions have secondary effects on markets. It's a good lesson. See you in the next lecture.